this is about generally electrifying microlights, but more specifically about how I go about electrifying a shadow. So you may ask why we would want to do that, but we'll come to that in a minute. There are quite a few commercially electric microlights now by aviation in America, and there is Pipistrel. Normally a couple of hours, are they?
1 hour flying, 1 hour recharge.
Yeah. And this is the motor at the front of the Pipistrel. So it's made by MRAX.
MRAX is a Slovenian company.
Yeah. And it's what I plan to use. They've made very good
certified. The motor is certified, the batteries are certified, the management system is certified.
Right. So
And the airframe is certified.
Yeah. So that sounds expensive.
It is expensive.
Yeah. I won't need a certified one. Do you know what model of motor this is? No. But it'll be about 80 horsepower. Continuous.
Yes.
Yeah. It's called an axial flux motor rather than a radial flux motor. All that really means is that you get more power for the weight. It's a very efficient, very powerful, small, light motor. We'll come on to the one I intend to use later. And I think the batteries plug in units. I think we've got a picture of that actually. Yes. So they can be slid out. There are 4 boxes there. 4? Well, they're in units anyway.
So can you do hot swap if you didn't want to wait
yes,
for
you can. So they're not all in one big lump. They're in units which are easily pick-upable.
Yeah.
So what physical size is that?
Well, it fits in the nose of the Pipistrel, just behind the motor, where the engine would go, really. Is that right, Deepak?
It's 60 kilos each battery, one in the front, one in the back.
Ah, yeah.
You can see the door there on the left-hand side.
Yes, so it's just behind the firewall, not that you really need a firewall with an electric aeroplane. And that's just to keep the CG in the right place. Oh, there we are. And there are all the parts. So we've got the motor here. This looks like a charger and controller. Little radiator there to cool the motor. They can be air cooled or liquid cooled, depending on how much peak power you're going to want to use. Batteries, I guess, aren't they? These look like earlier batteries.
So the battery on the left is for the bellies, and
Right.
those 5 batteries on the right.
Oh, is this a battery unit?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's got its own
battery
cooling.
unit, yes. And the liquid cooled battery, liquid cooled motor.
Yes.
And the other battery, the 5 stacks of them, that's for the Taurus.
Ah,
They're air
yeah.
cooled.
Right, the motor grinder, the electric motor grinder. And this is a purpose-designed propeller for electric motors because it's used also for regenerative braking. Is that right?
Not anymore.
No,
We didn't.
I'm going to say something about that later.
Didn't work out.
No, I can imagine why. So they won't really need a special propeller then, just an ordinary. So, just a bit of background for, about batteries. Everybody said of Tesla, they're world leaders really at the moment in batteries for electric cars. And they use what you would find in a laptop. They're called 18650 cells. They're cylindrical cells, a bit like a big AA cell. They're 18650, 18 millimeters in diameter, 65 millimeters long. The Tesla has about 7,000 of those batteries in parallel and series, which weighs quite a lot. that gives up to 100 kilowatt hours. It's one of the biggest batteries in any electric car. For a microlight, we wouldn't need anything like that. We'd only need about 15 kilowatt hours. But the same kind of cells. This is looking at the cost of batteries over recent years. So in 2005, compared with 2020, battery prices have really plummeted, and they're still continuing to go down. They're getting cheaper all the time because they're being produced in large numbers now, not just for cars, but for power storage. You can buy a battery pack for your home. If you've got solar cells, you can use those to charge up a battery pack, and then use that battery pack later on when you need the power. And there are even tariffs that you can sign up for where you can export electricity back to the grid from your solar panels and from the battery pack, get paid for it, to fill in the peaks on the grid when electricity is quite expensive to buy. This shows the growth in electric vehicle adoption. This was produced by a company that makes charging units for electric cars. So maybe it's a little bit biased, but any new technology follows this S-curve. So you start out with early adopters down here, and it's slow to take off, and then suddenly everybody cottons on and realizes that these things are viable and cheap to run, and the demand goes through the roof, and then reaches saturation, and everybody gets a car, an electric car. So they're anticipating that most people will have an electric car around 2040 or before. The government have set a time limit of 2035 now. I think they brought it back 5 years, where they're going to ban the sale of all petrol and diesel cars. So any new car will have to be either electric or hydrogen powered. There are some interesting points on here. Let me just refresh my memory. Everybody thinks, for the past 3 decades, hydrogen has been the fuel of the future, but there are still only about 6 points, recharge points for hydrogen across the country. So if you've got a hydrogen car, you're a bit stuck. So it points out that total hydrogen cars here in 2022, 2, and then up here, total hydrogen cars, 1. First insurance claim on a hydrogen car. So there's only 1 left, and nobody else has adopted them because you need a fantastic amount of infrastructure. The petrol companies, all companies, want to push hydrogen because it means they can keep all their petrol stations. But it's really not viable. It's very inefficient to produce hydrogen. And then you've got to store it in pressurized tanks. So it's a little bit dangerous to carry around a very highly pressurized tank in a car. And battery technology is coming ahead. They're coming along so fast that it'll be unnecessary. This is quite you'll be able to see this on the internet. We'll publish it, but it's quite an amusing chart. Somewhere up here it says that Jeremy Clarkson finally relents and buys an electric car. So this is getting back to shadows. This is what is in my shadow. It's a shadow CD, so it's a Rotax 503. And like any two-stroke, it's a very peaky power curve. We've got power here and torque here. Whereas for an electric motor, the torque is a horizontal line, so you get maximum torque at 0 revs. Well, this only starts at 3,000, so back here, at 0 revs, you've got maximum torque and a flat line, which slowly tails off at very high revs. So that's what makes cars, electric cars, so attractive. Instant power, instant torque, with zero revs, no need for a clutch, no need for gears. Not so important in the air, in an aeroplane, but it means you can reduce revs and the efficiency still stays there, and you've got quite a lot of torque. So it makes sense even in the air. This is the motor that I was intending to use on my Shadow. So it's an MRAX motor, Slovenian company, as Deepak mentioned. This is about 8 inches diameter. It weighs 9.1 kilograms, and it develops a peak power of 80 horsepower. Not for very long, because it'll get warm, but it will develop a continuous power up at 50 horsepower, which is exactly the same as a Rotax 503. So, extremely small, extremely light. It means you can basically put it anywhere on the airframe that is convenient. It doesn't have to be limited to where it is now. And this is a technical summary. So, actually, I'm underselling it. It wasn't 80 horsepower peak, it's 80 kilowatts, which is about 100 horsepower. And 40 kilowatts continuous, which is just over 50 horsepower. And these are the power curves. So you can see peak torque up here, virtually flat from 0 revs. Virtually flat, and then tails up at high speed. Power is just the torque times the engine speed, the motor speed. So the power starts at 0, of course, because you're at 0 speed, and gradually climbs in a straight line, because the torque is a straight line. So the red is peak power, and the green is continuous. And if you look at the efficiency here, the efficiency of a two-stroke of a 503 is appalling. It's about 15%, maybe edging up to 20. Electric motors, brushless electric motors, modern motors, are up to 96% efficient. So on my Rotax 503, which is 50 horsepower, it's throwing away, wasting over 5 times that. So 4 times that, sorry. So it's wasting 80 horsepower in heat. Only 15 to 20% of the fuel is being used to produce the engine power. Whereas this is throwing away 4% in heat. So it doesn't need fantastic cooling, because there's not very much heat to deal with. So at a cruise, when I'll be using probably about 10 kilowatts, it's only going to be throwing away, what's that, 400 watts. Right?
So how much does the Shadow use in cruise?
Well, it's a 50 horsepower engine, but I reckon at a slow cruise,
50 knots, 40 knots?
The slower you go, the less power, of course. So at 40 knots, it's only around 12 horsepower. With an electric motor, you've got the motor, which weighs 9.1 kilograms. You've also got an electronic controller, which will weigh about 5 kilograms. So you need to take that into consideration as well. It's a speed controller, so it looks after the motor. It's connected directly to your throttle lever, and so it supplies the motor with the correct power, and because it's a brushless motor, it's an AC motor, so it's applying the power in the right way, an alternating current, an alternating voltage. So they're quite complex electronic boxes. They look like that. These are the cells I was talking about, so 18650 cells, and these are the ones that I would use in the Shadow. And I would need 1400 roundabouts. So that they're lithium-ion cells, modern lithium-ion cells. They're used in laptops. Lithium-ion cells are used in all sorts of things. Phones, tablets. Petrol is very intense in its energy density. It's got more energy per kilogram than TNT, believe it or not. It just doesn't all go up at once. Batteries, you struggle to compete with that. But because you're only using maybe a fifth of the power or less, because you're not chucking away 80%, then it's not quite as bad as it sounds.
So that's the main thing why this is now possible, is it? Because energy density is...
Yes, energy density is increasing all the time. And these cells are probably on the leading edge at the moment. So it means that I can produce a battery of 1,400 cells, which is pretty energy dense and not too heavy. That will weigh about 70 kilograms. But we'll come to that in a second.
Are these the cells that catch fire?
No. Lithium polymer batteries have been used for years in model aircraft. And they're very high density, power density, but they are a bit volatile. And if you take power out of them too quickly, or you charge them too rapidly and they get hot, they can burst into flames. But these are lithium ion, not lithium polymer. Not as energy dense, but very safe. Well, relatively safe. Unless you short circuit them, then they're not going to catch on. Unless you demand huge amounts of power out of them, they're not going to catch on. And I'll be monitoring the temperatures in the air anyway. That's one of the key things to do. And I don't expect anything. I've been experimenting with an electric bike, so I made up a battery pack and I'm keeping an eye on the cells to see how warm it is. And how well they remain in balance. But we'll talk about that a little bit more later.
Are you going to tell us about the layout of the shadow of your cactus?
We'll come to that, yes.
Has the MoGas ever caught fire as well?
I don't believe it has. No, nobody's ever had a petrol fire, have they, Phil? Well, in a few years' time, when we've all got electric cars, we'll think we were batty to be driving around for decades with highly volatile liquid just behind us, waiting to explode on impact. If somebody invented that now, we'd think they were bonkers. So you make the batteries up into a pack like this, stacked in parallel, well, in parallel blocks this way, and then you connect each parallel block in series. So you connect a whole series of cells in parallel to get the capability of supplying high current, and then you stack them in series to build up whatever voltage you want. So I've done a calculation on the weights of a shadow. So in order to calculate how much battery I could carry, so current empty weight of my shadow is 194 kilograms. If I take the motor off and all the things that I don't need, starter, oil pump, battery, conventional battery, fuel tanks and fittings, total weight saved will be 55 kilograms. So the new empty weight is 138 as opposed to 194. The SSDR limit is 200 kilograms. I weigh a bit less than 70 kilograms. So 91 kilograms available for the new power plant and the battery. So that's made up of, it's actually 9.1 kilograms, the motor. The controller, I found a lighter controller now, so that's only about 5 kilograms. Some sort of battery box. There'll be 4 boxes filled with batteries, so each box will be light enough to lift easily. You'll be able to take them off the aeroplane, take them home if necessary to charge them. 1,450 cells. because I've got 69.6 kilograms available for batteries. 70 kilograms of batteries, that gives me about 17 kilowatt hours. May not mean a lot, but that would give me a duration of around an hour and a half. So yes, you could carry 2 batteries if you want to. And that all comes in under the 300 kilogram limit for SSDI. If you were to then re-register the Shadow as a licensed Microlight, take it back to a 2-seater, you could then put another 70 kilograms of batteries in, so that when you were flying solo, you'd have 3 hours duration. So it is viable at the moment, but it'll take a while before the regulations catch up, and that might be difficult to get approval at the moment until they rewrite the regulations. Is that your understanding, Bill? Yeah. So SSDI is the way to go, because you can develop it quickly with no interference from the authorities. But I would do it in such a way that everything would be approvable later on, so it would be done through the proper engineering standards. I've got a whole lot of links at the end of the presentation, which you can, when we put it on the internet, you'll be able to see these and click on the links. And it'll tell you a lot more about electric power.
What is the battery voltage you're operating?
I'm having a bit of a debate with myself about that, because obviously the higher the voltage, the more precautions you've got to take. But it means that you can, as the voltage goes up, the amount of current that you need goes down, so you need thinner cables. You can make do with thinner cables, because the heat generated in the cables is proportional to the current, not the voltage. It means you save a bit of weight, but the cables aren't going to be very long anyway, so I mean not need to. So it would be safer at a lower voltage. But the standard practice in cars is to have something around 400 volts. Porsche's Taycan, their electric sports car, uses 800 volts, I think. But each of my 4 packs will only be 36 volts, probably, something around that. So that's no danger at all. And as long as you're very careful in connecting the last lead, you should be okay.